It'll be an account manager, not an AE. Now, the reason I want to do that is because, like I said, my definition of success, my definition of sales is transferring enthusiasm from one person to another. I want to take our customers and grow them using this tool that I love, help them win with it. And as they win, they're going to need to buy more licenses and buy more elements of the tool. So I'll win as well. It's a different kind of sales.
Landing a great job opportunity is sometimes very challenging. Breaking into tech and getting hired as a sales rep can be even harder. When I was applying to my first sales jobs, I also struggled with the unknown. What to expect, what the tech industry was like, and how do I break in? After years of being an SDR myself, I've decided to build something I wish I had in the beginning. My name is Stefan, and in the SDR Hire podcast, I interview successful SDRs and salespeople who share their stories straight from the trenches. Learn how they got their first job offers, how they succeed every day in their roles, and what makes them stand out in their organizations. We all have what it takes. We just need someone to remind us of the opportunity and give us a better chance for success. Let's get your next SDR gig. Hey, welcome back to the SDR Hire podcast. I'm your host, Stefan, and if you're a new listener, this is a place where you can learn from top producing sales development representatives what it's like working in tech sales, how do you break in, what do companies look for, and how to succeed as an SDR, all for free. And today, I have the pleasure of hosting Bryan Mulry. Am I pronouncing, by the way, that correctly?
Yeah, that's it. Bryan Mulry, yeah.
Alrighty. Bryan Mulry, currently working as an SDR at SalesLoft. He recently landed on the 25 must-follow SDRs on LinkedIn in 2022, which is frankly how he caught my attention. But there's a lot more to him than meets the eye. From retail to hospitality to market research to business development, Bryan has been consistent at showing his passion for sales and business in general. And in addition to his current SDR role, Bryan is running a podcast of his own called Life with a Y, as well as mentoring young Irish grads in finding their first jobs. So let's just dive right in. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Let's just kick things off with a bit about your background and how did you end up in tech?
How did I end up in tech? Accidentally on purpose. It was one of those things. So you mentioned kind of hospitality, retail. I haven't talked about that for a long time, but I'm 24 now and I've been working in sales since I was 15. Started off in a clothes shop, then went to college, did door-to-door sales, not door-to-door, like door-to-door sales. It's like those charity people on the street, you know, the ones that are waving at you going, hey, can I have your bank account details? Yeah, I was one of those. And that was a 100% commission role. So in order to pay the bills, I then joined one of the largest theaters in Ireland as an usher, and I eventually then started working in their members club as a waiter and a barman. Did that up until in the middle of college. I found myself in tech. I found myself in SaaS in a company called Media HQ. That was my introduction to tech and SaaS and the kind of the world of business and the real application of what you learn in college. Stuck with them for a year and a half. Quit that company in December of 2019 so that I could have a really free final semester of college. And then February 2020 comes around and we all know what happens. I'm then very much unemployed May 2020, and end up landing a job as an SDR for Google Cloud. Was with them for a year, and now I'm here at SalesLoft. Made the move over to London, and now I sell sales engagement tools to sales reps.
Pretty comprehensive, I must say.
It's taken me 9 years to get to that sentence. So
fair enough. It's interesting that you know, it sounds almost like you could have been, you know, better if you had been selling door to door than just chasing people around the street.
I tell you what, it's an interesting one. So the office that I was in, half of the people did door to door and half of them did what I did. So it was very much the same culture, and a lot of people that have kind of done well in sales either started in photocopiers or door-to-door selling, and mine was somewhere in the middle. I don't know, they say that getting a door slammed in your face is hard, but I don't know if they've ever had someone stare directly into your soul while you're waving at them and then look away like you don't exist. So
oh my god, that sounds intense.
It was a lot of fun at the time. it was 100% commission, like I said. So it's taught me a lot about what I don't want out of a sales career. But I, have to do it sometimes.
For sure. I think that those lessons are actually more valuable than the ones where we know what we want to do, right?
I agree.
Yeah. So can you tell us more about the Google experience? So it was like start of the COVID, right?
Exactly. So it was May 2020. Oh no, could have been later. I think it might have been July 2020 now that I think of it. So I had, and essentially what was being set up at the time was Google Cloud is actually the third in the cloud space. So first it was AWS, and then it was Microsoft Azure.
Right.
And they were kind of fighting it out. Microsoft for enterprise, AWS for smaller companies, and then Google Cloud came in, and they were it's kind of like you were working in a startup in a massive organization. So that's what that's kind of where I was in. Initially I started selling Google Cloud to enterprise, trying to teach them that what they were doing was wrong. Essentially, the way that cloud works is you can either have your data on premise in a server that sits in your building, or you can have it in the cloud where it sits somewhere else and you can't see the server. And all of these old timey companies wanted to see the actual infrastructure, even though it was costing them a lot more money and it cost them a lot more time. So that was kind of the pitch. It was teaching someone something that they kind of knew but didn't. And then I moved over to what was called the Digital Natives division. And the Digital Natives was people who had already built their infrastructure on the cloud, and we needed to get them onto Google Cloud. So it was, they had built it on AWS, they had built it on Azure, and I needed to get them onto Google Cloud.
Which was harder?
Definitely the enterprise was harder. But I love the smaller side of things. That's where I find my passion. Talking to startups, anywhere between, once you've IPO'd and you've done all of that, I kind of lose interest. I kind of like the Series A to C, maybe even seed to E kind of areas of the journey, and I love those conversations. So that was a lot of fun.
Beautiful. And just for the part of the audience who's maybe not familiar with the stages of a startup growth, so we have like pre-seed and seed, and those are like very early stages of startups where they are basically either generating a very small amount of revenue or not even at all. And then as they grow and get more funding, each round is another series. So we have A, B, C, D, and it goes up to whatever letter before you go and do something called an IPO, or initial public offering, which makes a company public. How did I do?
Absolutely. Look, don't worry about it. If anyone sort of doesn't know it, it's not particularly important if you're not in tech. It's one of those pieces of things that we talk about when you're in the space.
Yeah. I was so curious about educating those older let's go those like enterprise folks,
old school companies. Not necessarily old people, but it was the old school way of thinking companies.
Exactly. Was it like did you have a hard time explaining what the actual cloud was?
No, never had a hard time explaining what the cloud was, right? They got it, they just didn't want it.
Wow. And that's what was the biggest objection? Like,
that's too much hassle. And that really was the problem. And that's kind of the problem that I've come across with change in enterprise companies. It's I'm doing okay with what I currently have. When you're in those large companies, it doesn't really matter to you whether that company has an extra zero on its balance sheet or not. Like, it doesn't match your bonus. It doesn't matter to you in any way. You're there for job stability. So yeah, with that, it wasn't necessarily like they were all kind of on the board of, yeah, that kind of sounds good, but I don't want to have to be the one to do it. That's how I remember it anyway.
Gotcha. So you stay there for about a year, right?
I was there for a year, and funnily enough, Google Cloud bought Salesloft as a piece of software. So it was a software that they needed to help sales reps be more efficient. They bought it in America, and then they needed an EMEA guinea pig. They needed a European guinea pig to test and see if it can work in Europe. That was me. So I did that. I spent part of my day using Salesloft, teaching people how to use Salesloft, talking about sales engagement, learning all of these different things. And after a while, it got really hard to go back to selling to CTOs and CIOs when I just spent part of the day explaining sales engagement to people. And at that stage, I jumped ship, and I made the move to go from Google Cloud to Salesloft.
Okay, so you basically, the tech that you were using, you went there to sell it, and that was
Exactly.
okay. That's fun. I actually did something a little bit similar. I don't know if you're familiar with a company called Lemlist.
Lemlist. Yes, I do. It's somewhere in the sales engagement space. It's like marketing automation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Salesloft is more of a like in the space with outreach, right? It's like for
Outreach,
more
non-clarity,
more
yeah.
kind of exactly, like more enterprise, more like these more established startups, right? Where Lemlist is really like dominating in the SMB space, and like they have like tens of thousands of users, like solopreneurs and like agencies and all that. And so I've been using Lemlist for about like years, and I eventually ended up in Lemlist as a sales rep, although for a short couple of months before I actually decided to go into this kind of entrepreneurship. But
Nice.
it was kind of relatable what you mentioned.
Nice, man. We all end up there somewhere, somehow.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and so where does the podcast kind of fit in? So, and we're going to talk about Salesloft, and that's kind of the focus of this. But like, where does the podcast come in, and what's your strategy there?
So the podcast actually started before I came to Salesloft, and essentially what I was doing was I was doing what all good SDRs do. I was taking in all of this data. All right, I was listening to podcasts, I was reading books, I was going on courses, and while I felt like I knew everything, I wasn't actioning everything. But what kept happening was I'd listen to a podcast with a sales leader,
Mm-hmm.
and that person on the other end of the podcast would say something personal. They'd say something like, and that was around about the time I had my divorce, or they'd say something like, and that's when my marriage fell apart. Sorry, those are the same things. That's when I stopped talking to my kids. These things, right? These massive bombshells.
Mm.
And then the podcast host would just keep going on about sales.
No.
And I was like, no, go back to that bit there. He said something important. What's to do? And I kind of came to realize that sales is very much about not about personalities, but there are big personalities in sales. And while you don't need to have a big personality, everybody in sales has a different story and a different why as to why they do things. And what I want to find out is why the top performers, or even just sales leaders in general, why they do what they do. What has happened in their life and how have they reacted to it, so that they can now shape the future of sales in the future. Because if everybody's dad left them when they were 7, and they're all sales leaders are carrying that trauma into how they lead me, then I want to know that real quick. But I kind of want to know, because these are the sales leaders that I will learn from, and then their leadership styles will shape me, and then that will shape my leadership styles in a couple of years. And I want to know who they are and why they do what they do. So that's what I do. I interview sales leaders to figure out who they are, why they do what they do. We get kind of deep, personal, what's happened in their lives.
I love it, and let's use this opportunity to just promote it real quick. So, Life with a Y.
The reason that it's called Life with a Y is because my name is spelled Bryan, but I grew up in the west of Ireland, so the only spelling that anyone had ever seen was Brian. So for a significant portion of my life, I was Bryan with a Y, because that was just that's how you say my name. So I was Bryan with a Y, and then I found that I was trying to figure out why people do what they do. So I wanted to know what their life is with a Y.
I love it. I really do. Awesome. And I'll try to actually I really love the part that kind of drives you, which is like exploring what makes a sales leader really, really good. And I'll try to do that with you as well today and going forward on these podcasts. But do you have a specific thing that is really driving you in sales? Like what is the number one reason you would say that is, actually driving you to like enjoy sales as much as you do?
Hey there. I wanted to let you in on a couple of additional resources available other than the podcast and the social media content. So I recently started a newsletter where I break down the best pieces of advice from the podcast about getting hired, how to be a top performing sales rep, into actionable nuggets that you can apply literally as soon as you read them. And in addition, if you're currently looking for an SDR role, you can fill out a form to let me know, and I'll do my best to help put you in front of tech companies hiring for SDRs. All right, back to the show.
There was a big reason as to why I left Google Cloud.
Mm-hmm.
My personal definition of sales is the transfer of enthusiasm from one person to another. Now, I'm a very enthusiastic person about specific things, sales, helping sales reps, but also like I'm enthusiastic about musical theater, my family, my girlfriend, travel, some sports, things like that. And I think that sales should be the transfer of enthusiasm from one person to another. That's our job. Pique curiosity, get people enthusiastic about the change that we can make, and then pass it on to someone else. And then, everything else, objection handling and call coaching and all that stuff. That's the tactics, but the strategy is transferring enthusiasm. So that's what drives me. That's what drives me in my sales career. If I'm not enthusiastic about something, or feel like I'm getting enthusiasm out of the people on the other end of the phone, then I'm going to move on to something else.
Fair enough. It sounds like you felt more enthusiastic towards a sales enablement tool like SalesLoft.
And can you imagine? I was sitting there with CTOs and CIOs, and they were saying, they were like explaining their problems to me. And they were saying, can you do this? And I go, yeah, I guess someone here, look, here's all of Google's resources. Someone will fix that for you, right? Whereas a sales rep would say, I have to spend 2 hours a day logging my activities to the CRM. And I go, oh, I hate it when that happens. Let me show you a way where you'll never have to do that ever again. Or I keep having to set tasks to remind myself when to follow up with this next person, and I only get maybe 4 or 5 touches on someone before I stop reaching out to them. And I'm like, let me show you how you can do 16 highly personalized, highly targeted touches on someone without spamming them, so you can get those responses. These are the problems that I care about. So that's what brought me into this space.
I love it. All right, and so there you are. So you figure out that you really enjoyed SalesLoft and sales enablement as a space, and actually the ability to help other reps perform better in their jobs. And so how did that transition look like from Google to SalesLoft? Like, did you apply there? Did they headhunt you? Like, how did that look like? And what was the interview process like?
That's a funny story, actually. One thing I will say is there is a massive difference between sales enablement and sales engagement.
Did I say, like, what did I say?
It's just one of these things that keep coming up in internally as well. So people will come back to me and go, hey, we already have a sales enablement tool. And I go, that's fine.
Sales engagement. Yeah,
for anyone who doesn't know the difference, sales enablement is things like helping your sellers know what content to send, know what talk tracks to use, enabling them as in training. Sales engagement is helping them execute on their tasks. So it's helping them send the emails, make the calls, get better coaching, close the deals. That's what the difference is ER and the piece of technology. Yes. And that is something that was corrected for me the very first interview that I had with SalesLoft. So how it happened was I started posting on LinkedIn a lot about sales. And I kind of decided that I wanted to be in SalesLoft. And then I had to make SalesLoft agree with me. So what I did was, this kind of kicked off at 2 different things, the universe kind of hitting me in 2 different ways at the exact same time. The first one was a recruiter that I kind of semi-worked with in the past. He tried to place me but couldn't. He sent me a message and said, I've joined the dark side. I've gone into tech sales. And I've gone, okay, well, who are you with? And he said, SalesLoft. And I go, all right, I need you to tell me everything about that interview process, please. Wow. And then he did. Around about the same time, I was asked to speak at my very first Sales Confidence event. Now, Sales Confidence is a group in the UK. They do kind of events where sales leaders and sales reps give advice to each other. I was asked to speak at it for the very first time, and I was asked to speak at the same time as a guy called Jack Nico. Jack Nico is the top performing commercial account executive here in SalesLoft. So he and I spoke at the same event. Ollie Sharp, who's the VP of EMEA, and almost all of the European SalesLoft SDRs were on that event, and I knew they'd be there. So what I did for my talk was talk about how to be consistent by using cadences and how to write personalized emails, things that SalesLoft I knew would care about. So I put myself saying the right message in front of the right people. Now, that's not repeatable What happens next is repeatable. I asked Harry Hudson, who's the account executive, who's the guy who messaged me, the recruiter who said I've joined the dark side. I asked him to refer me in because in SalesLoft, 1/3 of every employee, of all employees, have been referred in. If you're referred in, you're more likely to get the job. So I asked him to refer me in. He then helped guide me through the process. Funnily enough, Jack Nico had already referred me in, so he got the referral bonus at the end. But anyway, that's just
I was
sales
about
reps being sales reps.
I was about to ask you, like, who got eventually
it
the
was
signing bonus, the referral bonus?
Sales reps being sales reps. So Harry then helped walk me through the process. The first thing was a conversation with Rob Byrne, who is now my manager. It was supposed to be 15 minutes. We spoke for 50. Everything from like Ireland to sales to who I was and all that stuff. I was one of his first Irish hires in here. He's Irish himself, so he wanted to grow a little contingency. So the first step was an interview with the hiring manager. Second step was like a set of tests. It's like personality tests, intelligence tests, just these random kind of normal tests.
That's I'm sorry to interrupt you. Like, that's not really usual when hiring SDRs, at least from what I've heard.
SalesLoft do not hire SDRs with zero experience.
Gotcha.
That's not how it works. We have to run such a tight sales process internally that, so when I'm reaching out to sales leaders, I have to be the best sales rep in their inbox to teach them that I can then teach their sales reps to be the best reps in their inboxes. So if I'm bad, then it looks like SalesLoft is bad. And that's kind of why they do that. So that not the personality test, but those psychometric tests, they're kind of important because SalesLoft is very, very, very strict in its culture.
I love it.
Then after that, we had 3 rounds of interviews. There was a 30-minute peer interview where the other SDRs were like, yeah, this guy's cool. Then there was a core values interview. So SalesLoft takes its core values very, very seriously. So there's a full 30-minute interview around whether or not you fit those 5 core values. And then there's a 1-hour top grade interview. Now, a top grade interview essentially tries to establish patterns in your behavior in the past and decide if those patterns will make you successful in SalesLoft. It's 2 hours of face-to-face interviews plus a conversation. There used to be a test. There isn't a test anymore. It was like 7 or 8 different steps all in a row. And they wanted to do it over like the space of 2.5 weeks. And I went, no. And we had it done within 7 days because I was like, I've been thinking about SalesLoft for a long time. I am not wasting this time. Like, we're getting this done. And that was one of the things that actually helped get me the job. If you're ever going for an interview in one of these things, close them. At the end of every single call, say, what happens next? What's the next step? Can we get that booked in? All of these things. You're supposed to do it as a sales rep, so you're also supposed to do it as a sales interviewee. So that was the process. I then handed in my notice in Google Cloud, worked there until the end of June 2021, spent the month of July emigrating. So I moved from Dublin to London. So I spent the whole month emigrating, and then August 1st came around and it started.
Congrats.
Thanks.
That was I just enjoyed it. It was almost like a movie. Like things were happening one thing after another.
Man. Well, here's another tip, right? One of the things that I didn't mention that I also did was there was only about 6 or 7 SDRs on the team at the time.
Right.
I messaged every single one of them on LinkedIn and asked for 10 minutes.
There we go. Like before getting hired or after?
This was during the interview process.
Awesome.
This was during the interview process. And what happened was Harry Hudson, who was one of those SDRs, messaged me and said, you're being talked about in the WhatsApp group chat. Reason being is one of them had mentioned, oh yeah, this guy, Bryan, reached out to me. And 7 other people went, oh my God, I thought he only asked me for time. So each one thought that they had only been asked specifically for their time, and I had talked to every single one. Now, if you're trying to do that today in SalesLoft, there's about 32 SDRs on the team. So good luck getting all of us to say yes. But that was one of the things I did. I reached out, and then that filtered up to Rob, who knew I was serious about the job.
There we go. I recently had a chat with, I actually published the episode. It's with Kevin Hollingsworth. He's an AE right now, but it's literally the same talk track, which is go ahead, have a conversation with you. Like, you need only two people to get the inside information that you need. Like, you probably need
Absolutely.
just one.
Mhm.
But like, what I'm saying is, maybe, whomever would want to be a part of SalesLoft, they don't necessarily have to message like 30 people. You can
No,
just go with like 5 or 10
yeah,
and
go to
see what
me.
happens. Yeah, exactly.
Drop me the
Exactly.
message. Other people help me, I will help you.
Awesome. This was awesome. I really love this story. It's so inspiring to hear. Like, you literally did everything you're supposed to, and then some. Like, but it like, the passion towards the company really shows. That
Mhm.
I think that was like one of the main drivers. I assume it wasn't really like this with Google.
No, I got into Google because I liked the brand name and it made sense and it's a good place to start my career. And I'm very glad that I did. It taught me a lot of really cool things. Um, about things that I like and about things that I don't like. But SalesLoft, it's funny. I get like messages. I get 4 to 5 recruitment messages a day, and not one of them has, things that are like double my base salary, promotions to 2 or 3 levels higher, like all of these different things. And I'm like, you're not SalesLoft. It's not. You won't help me sell this product in this market to these people. So I'm no good to you.
Okay, speaking of which, can you quickly give us just a rundown of those three things? So, which product, what is the product? So, in real
Right.
quick terms, what is the market? So, enterprise, SMB, mid market, all of that. Can you just run us through that?
Absolutely. Sales after sales engagement platforms, like we already talked about, it's something that helps reps execute and do what they need to do on a daily basis. The way SalesLoft is different is we're actually about 3 or 4 tools all in one. So SalesLoft started by making sure that you can log all of your activities to the CRM, which meant that sales reps got about 2 or 3 hours back every day. That was the first step. Second step was like, okay, we need to help sellers be more organized. Most sellers give up on an account or on a person after 4 to 6 touches, where right now, today, it takes between 16 and 18 personalized touches across 3 or 4 channels in order to book a qualified C-suite meeting. Most reps were given up, so we developed a thing called cadences, which means that you can be personalized and relevant at every step while also making sure that you're following up in the right way. Now, that meant that the quantity of activities went through the roof. Emails were really up. A lot of people making more cold calls. You were more efficient. You're making more LinkedIn connects. And after that, we wanted to help make sure that reps had a high quality of messages. So there's a call intelligence tool. Every cold call and every Zoom call that you make gets recorded, and there's a layer of AI and coaching that goes into it. So you're not just saying all of these things, you're saying the right things to the right people at the right time. That should create a high number of deals. And then for those people who close deals, it is very difficult to manage a high number of deals or even a low number of deals and follow-up process all at the same time. It's very difficult to spot gaps in deals when you haven't been closing deals for a very long time. So there's a deal management tool in SalesLoft as well that helps sellers spot gaps in deals and win more revenue, but also close deals faster. The way SalesLoft is different is if you want that entire tech stack, you're going to need something like a cadencing tool like Outreach, you're going to need a call intelligence tool like Gong, and you're going to need a forecasting tool like Clary. Or you can buy SalesLoft, which is all of those in one plus some. So it's the only place where you can create opportunities, manage opportunities, forecast opportunities, and close them all in the same place. It's the only one that's built for sales reps. That's SalesLoft in a whole. Who we sell to, sales leaders, sales operations leaders, and sometimes marketing if they own the SDR function. Some people think that SalesLoft is only for SDRs. It's very much not. It's actually more so for full cycle sales reps who need to prospect and close, but also CSMs, so customer success managers, account managers, and sales ops. It's a lot easier to deal with one tool than it is to deal with 4 or 5, and it's also cheaper. So that's who we sell to and what I sell. What was the last part of that question?
Well, basically, what do you focus on? Which is like, is it the enterprise, mid market,
Enterprise.
SMB?
So personally, I target companies that are less than 750 employees. So I'm very emerging in SMB. We also have a significant enterprise division. So like I said, Google Cloud is one of our biggest customers. So we have we cover it all. Because of the division I'm in, I target smaller tech companies, those that have high growth targets and need to make their sellers more efficient, but don't have the money to buy a load of new reps. They need to make their existing sellers do better and help existing sellers book more meetings. That's where we come in.
Very impressive. I love how native this plug was.
Man, I've been saying this for a year and a half. Like,
I don't know. This was impressive. Okay, so you explained the whole interview process, which was very impressive. I've never heard of a company having such a comprehensive interview process, at least for the SDR position. And like, if anybody knows, just let us know in the comments. Like, do you know of a company that has had such a comprehensive interview process similar to this one? But I've never heard. So
there is a reason for it.
Oh yeah, because
Salesloft.
it's the best company out there.
No, not at all. I'm biased, but I've been drinking the Kool-Aid for a while. Salesloft is very careful about its culture, right? And the worst thing that it can do is a bad hire. We would rather have someone who is a fantastic culture fit go in the wrong role than have someone who perfect for the role but a bad culture fit. And that gets really difficult to scale as you go from, like, when I started there was 40 people, now there's 150, and that's a year. So sorry, that's just in EMEA. We're about 1,000 people globally now.
Wow.
And what that means is you need to make sure that all of those 1,000 people have the same values and are not nowhere near the same person. There's a diversity, massive diversity through us, but they're all the right culture fit and they all have the same core values when it comes to doing their jobs. That's what the interview process is about.
Wow. All right. That really makes sense, but it almost sounds like a fairy tale, because it sounds like something you would want to hear, but not really what happens. Although from what you're saying, it really does sound like a more than a real thing.
So my number one question during my interview process, when I talked to every single one of those SDRs, was what's the least favorite thing about working for Salesloft? Like, what do you hate about it? They had nothing to say. The worst thing that they could say was sometimes our Salesforce data isn't good. Yeah. And that I think is a big testament. I've never seen that before. And now people ask me, what's the worst thing that happens in Salesloft when I'm interviewing them? And I go, I don't know, man. Like, sometimes I work too much. Like, it's one of those. Now, that's a big thing. We need to make sure that people don't work too much, but it's very difficult to believe that something like this can exist, especially as an SDR in tech in London, which is not the best, environment in the world.
How so?
Oh man, you've got toxic companies out here who think SDRs are just, phone monkeys who will just, make sure that they're banging out those dials and then all will be good. They've got a bad approach to sales. They've an awful approach to people management. And there's a lot of them in London because they're backed by venture capitalists who need to make sure that they keep the machine churning.
Yep.
Nothing against VCs. Some are great. Nothing against venture capitalists. But yeah, in London in particular, there's a grinded out mindset, whereas in Salesloft, thankfully, that hasn't transferred over. When I find something bad, I'll ship it over to you and let you.
That's refreshing to hear. I'm not sure if you kind of mentioned this, but what would you describe as the one thing that makes you as successful as you are?
Curiosity. And that question, I know the answer came out to you very quickly there, but I've answered this quite recently. Curiosity. So my number one, my kind of superpower is the questions that I ask. Even though I haven't been asking many in this conversation. But yeah, that's kind of the answer to that. It's I'm asking questions to understand, not so that I can, speak again. And that's a skill that took me a long time to learn. It took me a long time to get that, especially in the sales world where you want to show people how much you know. Being able to sort of ask questions and just sit back and then continue those threads, even though they might not be leading where you want them to lead, can be, it's difficult, but that's kind of my thing.
I understand that. Also, like, do you feel like, at least in the beginning, I remember when I was starting out, I felt like either being afraid to ask questions and then later asking questions for the sake of asking questions. Like, I was told I'm supposed to ask questions and then I do ask them without actually having a conversation. Like, did you have those situations in the beginning? How did you kind of, end up like going around them? And just...
Definitely, man. I have those conversations nowadays sometimes,
Yeah.
where I'll ask a question for the sake of asking it, and it happens in our job because we have to qualify. We have to get
Yeah.
specific things out of people.
Yeah.
However, am I ever afraid of asking questions? I was afraid of asking a stupid question to a CRO.
Mm-hmm.
I was afraid of asking a stupid questions to VPs of sales. That was what I was afraid of at the time. So then I'd try and ask these high, convoluted, real intelligent sounding questions that I just I didn't care about the answer to. Whereas now I'll just be like, hey, look, what are your targets? What are you looking at? Where are we here? I've had enough of the conversation. I've had enough practice to speak the right languages. And yes, I've also asked stupid questions just for the sake of asking a stupid question. It's on my list.
There we go. Yeah. Why I mentioned this, it's probably something each and every one of us has went through, because
Definitely.
it's just like you said, we just have to qualify, and like sometimes it
We just
just
have to do it
happens.
sometimes. Yeah.
Especially like, what's your opinion on the band process? Because like, personally, I'm not a fan. I think it's a very old methodology that goes towards you as the seller more than towards the prospect that you're kind of prospecting into. So like, what do you think about it?
I get that a lot. I'm actually a fan of BANT, but only for junior reps because you have to teach a qualification method, and that's the easiest one to understand.
Fair enough.
Junior SDRs, junior sales reps, they need to know that there's a methodology to this and that there's some things that they just need to get. That's where BANT comes in, and BANT is very easy to understand. However, once you've kind of gotten that down, you're no longer banting and you've no longer got an idea, then you should kick over to Medic. That's my understanding of it. Now, for anyone who hasn't come across Medic, it's MEDDICC. There's a whole load of books on it. It's a whole other qualification method. That is the one to learn. That is the one to go for. And if I'm wrong about that, you can blame your entire sales career on me, because it is an incredible qualification matrix and metric, and it makes sure that you do sales right. You're right, BANT is very much about the seller, but I think it's a necessary evil at the beginning of a sales cycle, because if you try and teach a junior sales rep Medic, it's not that they can't do it, but it's too much to manage in one go when you're still trying to figure out how to sell.
I love it. I haven't really thought about it in that way, but it does make a lot of sense to train newbies in like, just to understand that there is a methodology behind sales.
Hey everyone, I started SDR Hire in the first place to help as many of you as I can to land your next job, become better at sales, and just help you propel your career. So if you're finding value in this content and you know somebody who will benefit from it, please share it with them, tag them in a post, send them via text, share it wherever you share stuff with your community. And as always, all of this is completely free and is here to help everyone succeed. So your recommendation goes a long way. Appreciate you, and let's get back to the show.
Like, marketers never use ADA anymore. They don't use attention, interest, desire, action. That's just not how they work. But you're taught it. You're taught it in college, because I did it in college. You're taught it at the beginning of your marketing career. You're never taught it when you're trying to build a campaign for 2 years down the line. But it's an important methodology to know, and it's the same thing applies in sales.
Okay. Outside of the way you prospected yourself into SalesLoft, what is one of the most creative ways that you've ever booked a demo?
Most creative ways I booked a demo. All right, I got two for you. Let me see if there's yeah. Okay, so I got two for you. The first one is one that anyone can replicate. I was prospecting a chief marketing officer, massive company. This was for SalesLoft when I first joined, massive company. And he had just run a marathon. So I sent a donation to the marathon that to the cause that he run the marathon from. I sent the donation under his name, and I took a video of me doing it and sent it to him. And he was like, okay, buddy, you get the meeting. But another one was so I went onto his LinkedIn, couldn't get anything. But when you go on LinkedIn Sales Navigator, there's this little button that sees if he's connected his Twitter. And he had connected his Twitter, and in his Twitter, he called himself it's like a certified wine lover or something. And I went, okay, this dude likes wine. So one of the things that we have in SalesLoft is a thing called Reach Desk. Now, Reach Desk is a tool that I am very lucky to have access to that allows me to send gifts to prospects without me personally getting their address. So I'm not asking them for their address. And using that tool, I sent him a SalesLoft bottle of wine, with something like "drinks on me?" as the note. And he came back almost immediately, and he was like, "Yeah, of course, absolutely." And for anyone prospecting into the UK, one that I got one recently, all you need is an email for this. I saw that he was a football fan, so I saw that on Twitter. But also a Twitter trick is if you find someone on Twitter, go to the first thing that they followed. So go to their followers and keep scrolling till you find the first thing that they followed, and that's actually what they're actually interested in. So for this guy, it was Man United, and I sell a sales software about sales performance. So I said, look, if you're anything like Man United, you're having worries about performance right now. And he replied immediately. Now, I'm not a football fan. I'm not a soccer fan. I don't know really what I was talking about, but I knew enough that Man United were not in a good place. And I went, cool, I bet I can do something creative with this. But all I found out was that he likes football.
Yeah. How long did it take you? How long did it take you?
Not long when you know what you're looking for.
Yeah,
Not long when you know what you're looking for. Like if I scrolled on his LinkedIn and saw nothing, and I went to his Twitter and saw nothing, I'd have sent him a different message completely.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, yeah. So how long does it take you to kind of personalize your outreach?
Not long at all. I spend about 90 seconds per person, and I'm highly, highly personalized with my messaging. Oh, there's a whole methodology to this.
Let's not, like,
if anybody wants that methodology, put my name into YouTube and search the words best practices. And I just did a 1.5 hour long session where I taught people how to reduce that time down to 90 minutes or to 90 seconds. So go searching for that, and you'll be able to get it there.
I'll put it down in the links below the video, so people can find it. I actually want to find it, and really, because like 90 seconds, that's really,
yeah, it doesn't take long.
No, but like I haven't heard anyone coach such a low number, like such small time to prospect into a single person. Like, for example, Kyle Coleman mentions like 555. I think it was
555 is a very good methodology. Mine is 90 seconds because I'm only looking for very specific things, and if I don't have those specific things, I send them something else.
Like more generic,
personalized. It's more. If something has happened in their company that means they need me, it's still personalized because it's something that's happened in their company. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's what I'm
got it. Okay, so that's kind of company-based personalization. Let's call it like that.
Trigger templates are what they're called, but it's more like something has happened, which means you need me now, and I'm going to reach out to you now. That's kind of how it works. So it's still personalized because something that's happened to them recently. But it's not personalized to knowing what their dog's name is, or the fact that they go hiking, or what their college was, or anything like that.
Gotcha. Okay. Now let's kind of flip the script just a little bit. What is one of the things that you hate the most about being an SDR or the SDR role?
It is not treated the way it's supposed to be treated. Everyone thinks that SDRs are just a training camp for AEs. And that is completely different. They are different jobs with different skill sets. The best way I can describe it is like a detective and a judge. The SDR goes out, finds all the pieces. They go and they kind of craft this hypothesis. They craft this story. They're like, I think I should reach out to these people with this story to try and get them in to have a conversation about what I think they need from us. And then the AE is a judge. Their job is to go, yes, that is correct, or your story is wrong. Or I've done this enough times to know that's right or that's wrong. And then it's their job to walk them through the process. The detective doesn't do the trial. The judge does the trial. And I think the SDR job is kind of treated as a training camp for AEs, and everyone wants to get out of it. I think that the SDR job is built that way because of Salesforce's predictive revenue model, because that's what they needed. They needed it as a training camp, but it's evolved into its own role with a very specific skill set that one shouldn't be as hard. It shouldn't feel like a grind when you're doing it. There has to be some element of fun to it that we're just missing somewhere. And two, you have to be able to be a career SDR. You've got career AEs, you've got career account managers, you've got career SDR managers. An SDR manager doesn't go like, oh, I really want to manage AEs. I cannot wait until the end of this year when I'm able to manage AEs. That's not it. And it shouldn't be the same. It should be the same for the SDRs. There's something missing there. And I think it's the respect that it deserves, you know?
Interesting way of thinking about it. Okay. I mean, we could probably talk about this a lot. I have a bunch of opinions. Like, for example, some folks really just want to, break into tech. SDR is a good place for that. And then always like trying to find a way out, which is fine. Like, I respect everybody's path.
You're using it for what it needs to be used for.
Exactly. But the SDR role doesn't necessarily have to lead to being an AE, to be an SDR manager. And it's completely cool to be an SDR for a long time, like you mentioned, a career SDR role.
Here's the thing, though. Someone who's just joined us here has been an SDR for 3 years.
Okay.
Okay,
cool.
She spent 3 years as an SDR. Now she's just joined us as an SDR. By the time she gets out of this role, she'll probably be in and around an SDR for about 4 years. That in our space looks like a failure.
And that's the problem.
Space, it looks like she has been the most successful SDR in every single one of those companies, but she's really, really, really good at this job. She does want to expand her skill set. That's why she's come to SalesLoft. SalesLoft will teach her how to become a fantastic AE. That's why she's here. But she's here because she's maxed out her potential as an SDR, and it took her 3 years to do it. People try and spend 6 months in this role and then dip somewhere else. There's a problem there. But yeah, people have gone into, in SalesLoft, people have gone into marketing, CSMs. They built a role for Tom Boston because he was so good at something else. He was great as an SDR as well, but he's very good at social. So it doesn't have to be in account managers. It doesn't have to be an AE. It doesn't all have to be new business.
An awesome subject. Well, this kind of leads me to something that I was really looking forward to ask since the beginning. Where do you see yourself? Like, what does the future hold for you?
All right.
You have an answer ready for every question, literally. Like you're like
it is it's the middle of September right now when we're recording this. Whenever it goes out, it doesn't matter. The reason I bring that up is my next role is actually going to be, all going well, it'll be an account manager, not an AE. Now, the reason I want to do that is because, like I said, my definition of success, my definition of sales is transferring enthusiasm from one person to another. I want to take our customers and grow them using this tool that I love, help them win with it. And as they win, they're going to need to buy more licenses and buy more elements of the tool. So I'll win as well. It's a different kind of sales. That's where I want to be. I'm expecting that to be February. So it'll be another 6 months from now. But that is very much dependent on headcount internally. That is more of a logistical question than a capacity question, unfortunately. So that's me. I don't actually necessarily want to stay in the new business side of things. I love it. But for me, it'll be something a little bit new. Now, let's see if that changes when this goes out. But yeah, that's hopefully my next step.
Hopefully. And in that case, let's just have another chat in February when you become an account manager.
Here's hoping. And hopefully I'll have different insights for you.
For sure. Oh, you will, for sure. But however, this has been gold so far. I'm so enjoying this conversation very much. But we should kind of start wrapping it up. So what would be your message to everyone just trying to break into tech or become an SDR?
Pick a leader. Don't pick a company or an industry or a job. Pick the leader. This industry changes way too quickly. And yeah, choose the leader that you want. So if you're going through these interview processes, you're looking at these companies and you're doing an interview with someone that you don't like, jump out. You will find someone else in the right space, in the right place. Yeah, choose your leaders carefully, because there's a lot of people who pick a brand name and get in with people that they don't like, and then that person hires people like them. So you'll be surrounded by people that you don't like, and you're like, okay, I'll just wait until this next step, and then that next step doesn't come, or it's 18 months of misery, and then the next person might not be great. Choose the leader, because what'll happen is you could be 3 months in a company and that leader might move, and if you've got good rapport with that leader, you'll probably go with them. So that's what I would suggest.
I couldn't agree more. Beautiful answer, I must add.
Thank you.
Hey there, hope you're enjoying these episodes as much as I do making them. If you prefer consuming a shorter format content, I post the best snippets from the podcast on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, so feel free to choose your favorite platform and I'll see you there. On the other hand, if you just love binging longer formats, the podcast is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, and I also often post interesting sales and hiring stuff on LinkedIn. All right, back to the show.
Okay, what would be message to your future self in like 3 years?
You better be happy. If I'm doing this where I'm at now, going through all of this journey for like, I'm trying to get better at self-awareness and slowing down and relaxing and looking after myself and trying to maximize the happiness piece. If I'm in this journey now and in 3 years time, I'm stressed, unhappy, unproductive, not having any fun, I'm gonna be annoyed at him. So you better be having fun. You better be happy, whatever you're doing. And he definitely made the right calls.
All right, love it. That's a good thing to strive for. Let's just jump into the rapid questions and then we can wrap it. So, sure. What would you say? What is the best SDR learning resource?
JB Sales. John Barrows, JB Sales. If you don't know what that is, reach out to me and I'll introduce you to the right guys.
Perfect. I did one of their courses myself. It's really awesome.
It's fantastic.
Okay. Which is the best SDR skill in your mind?
Listening.
I love it.
Yeah, listening.
Best SDR creator to follow.
Best SDR creator to follow, Josh Braun, JOSHBRAUN. He'll teach you how to be succinct.
Love it. This isn't actually the first time that somebody's mentioning Josh Braun. Okay. Yeah. What is your favorite SDR channel? Like email, cold call, LinkedIn video, all of that?
Oh, I'm video all day, every day.
There we go.
Yeah, I love sending a highly personalized video.
Hell yeah! Like real quick, walk us through one of your videos. Like how do you prepare a video and how do you
all of my videos are pretty much extensions of what I teach in the session that you'll find on YouTube. But essentially, I'll start with their face. So when you look at the thumbnail, it's their face. So then hopefully they'll click into it. And I will find something about their companies. Let's say they're growing. I'll then go to the graph where I see them growing. And I'll say, hey, look, I see that you guys are growing. Normally, VPs of sales, when they're growing, they will. And I'll go straight into my pitch. And it's not really a pitch. The pitch is all about asking. It's like, I see this, so I think you're having these problems. Now, as a result of having these problems, you're probably going to be missing this. And I'm wondering, how are you making sure you don't miss that thing? That's kind of my video. It goes from me being in a small box in a corner to asking them a question. And then the copy in the email is, I had a quick question when I was on your LinkedIn. So I made you this quick video. And
what's like the call to action? Like, do you just leave it off with like how are you handling
I leave
this?
with a question. Yeah, I go, hey, look, how are you making sure you don't miss these higher growth targets?
There's Josh Braun, actually.
Yeah, exactly. But then I leave it. That's it. You're done. And what'll happen is, so Josh Braun calls it poking the bear.
Yeah.
And I leave it alone, and people will either respond or they won't. But if they don't respond, when they get bumped 2 days later, then they do respond. So.
I love it. Okay, real quick. So, favorite email or cold call opener? Maybe we can go with the cold call.
Cold call opener. That's it. I'll give you my cold call opener. Is it Stefan or Stefan?
Stefan.
Hey, Stefan, thanks for taking the call. This is Bryan with SalesLoft. How have you been?
Pretty cool.
Good. Well, look, I know you weren't expecting the call. This is a cold call. Do you mind if I take 30 seconds to explain why I called you? So it's, how have you been from JB Sales,
Mhm.
and it's the permission-based opener, which allows me to earn the 30 seconds, which lets me tell them why.
I love it.
After that, you don't know what's going to happen. So
Yeah, that's for sure. I love how you took the parts of different like schools that and you implemented it in what works for you, which is actually what, for example, Kyle Coleman loves to mention. Make it your own and make it work for you. I love it.
Mhm.
Let me see. So, what is your favorite call to action?
Worth looking into? Question mark.
There we go.
Although I need to get better at this. There's a different call to action I should be using, and it's a no based call to action. So it's something like, would a conversation about this be a crazy idea? Question mark.
Mhm.
You need to. It comes from Chris Voss, and it comes from this idea of you need to get people to say no, because
Yeah.
when they say no, they're in power.
Mhm.
So if I say, is this worth looking into? That means I'm asking them for a yes, and people don't give yeses. Whereas if I say, is it a crazy idea for us to have a conversation about this? The answer is no, that's not a crazy idea. Great, so let's have a conversation. I need to get better at my no-based call to actions.
Gotcha. What do you think? Like, do they work better in an email or on a cold call?
Both. It's all the same. It's the same principle. It doesn't matter if it's written or
Yeah.
calling. I have more experience on the email side than I do the cold calling side, but this is a new change that I'm doing recently, so I'll
Gotcha.
come back to you in a couple of weeks.
No, for sure. I actually agree with you in total, and I use the would it be crazy idea? I use the would you be opposed to?
Yeah.
And like people are not used to it. And for example, for some of my clients that I do outbound, they're like, let's just skip that. And like, okay, and then sometimes I change it to like, are you interested? Would you be curious to learn? Whatever, but
whatever you do, don't ask for time. Whatever
exactly.
you do, don't ask for time.
Exactly. Awesome. Final question. What is your favorite tech sales acronym?
Oh no. Oh, but there's so many. Give me 1 second while I search and see if this
For
works.
sure.
No, I need to see, because I have an answer for you. I just need to know that if you Google it, you'll get the right one. Yeah, okay. So my favorite one is called Flumps, FLUMPS. And when you try and figure out what a flumps is, Google flumps Tom Boston. So FLUMPS Tom, TOM, Boston, BOSTON. That is what you need to Google. That is my favorite acronym.
Oh, I'm dying. All right. This is awesome. Okay. This has been BRB. This has been a pleasure. You were an awesome guest.
Thank you. I'm really glad that we got to do this. I don't get to chat about this whole sales side of things much, so I'm glad we got to have this conversation.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you had the chance. I think this was probably this is the longest episode I've shot so far.
I am so sorry for your next guest who has to keep talking past this level.
No, we'll try to keep it lower. But in any case, I really enjoyed this. I can't wait to publish the episode. I can't wait to see your next steps. I'll keep following you on LinkedIn, and there's probably like a dozen like topics that we could have covered as well. So if you have any ideas or suggestions for the next one in like 6 months, then more than happy to oblige.
Look, I'll be around. And look, if anybody wants to chat about anything that we talked about today, just hit me up on LinkedIn. That is the best place to find me. And I put out a load of tips there as well. Actually, one thing I do say to people, and this is on every single thing that I do, is if you're going to reach out to me, send me a message that says, hey, I saw you on the podcast, or I heard you on the podcast. And then, just leave it at that. But that means that if you need something from me in the future, when you send me a message and say, hey, Bryan, can I get this from you? Or I need this from you. When I scroll up, I'm like, oh, there's that person that messaged me about being on the podcast. Or there's that randomer asking for questions or asking for help. And it just creates that little bit of rapport. I do that when I find people, and then I ask them to be on my podcast a couple of months later. And it's just a little tip that people can use for me, for anyone else.
Perfect. It's been a pleasure once more. I can't wait to see what's next. Until then, I'll catch you around.
Thank you for tuning in to the SDR Hire podcast, the only podcast exclusively focused on SDRs, where successful salespeople share about their hiring stories and sales adventures straight from the trenches. If you found this useful, go ahead and share it with someone else you know is trying to break into tech or land their next SDR gig. You can find SDR Hire on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and catch you in the next episode.